Welcome back, everyone, to another reaction video. Well, I saw that BlueJay has a new video out that looks pretty interesting and seems timely for Halloween having been just this past weekend. It's called The Dumb History of Vampire Hunting. So I'm not sure exactly where he's going with this. I know that vampire scares have been a thing, even in the early history of the United States. We had some vampire scares in New England in the late 1700s, early 1800s. So it'll be interesting to see his always very humorous take on some history. I'll put the link in the description. Definitely check out BlueJay. He's one of the most entertaining but also quite accurate historical storytellers out there. I want to thank Alex right up the road from me in Cleveland, who signed up late in the summer as a patron. Thank you so much, Alex, for your support, as well as Julian in Camp Hill, Pennsylvania. I think that's over by Harrisburg, isn't it? Thank you both so much. Could not do this without you. Let's dive into this one.
If you're a woman attending a male-dominated STEM university, first of all, I'm sorry, and second of all, you're probably aware of how difficult it is to have normal social interactions. Odds are you've gone to a bar to drown yourself in beer along with your debt when you bump into a cute guy. Now, running into a random dude and his friend while buzzed and alone, there's only one thought going through any woman's mind. Dear God, I hope he's not an engineer. He then introduces himself as Reynold, a third-year student studying industrial engineering. Oh, thank God, you think to yourself. At least he's not.
I have so many questions about where this is going right now.
An engineer. The two of you start to hit it off when he excuses himself to use the restroom, leaving you with his quiet friend. Feeling confident, you turn to him and ask, "Hey, what's Reynolds' number?" Lighting up in a way only a nerd blind to social cues would, he says, a Reynolds number is a dimensionless quantity denoting the ratio of inertial to viscous forces. It's used to describe flow patterns from laminar flow to turbulent flow. That's right, you've just committed the cardinal sin of asking a question as a female in the presence of an engineer. For example, you know when you use a garden hose set to jet? That water's chaotic. That's a high Reynolds number, turbulent flow. Pouring honey from a bottle.
Is BlueJay an engineer? Some form of science background? Because I feel like he knows a little too much about all this.
Bottle on some toast? That flows nice and steady. Low Reynolds number, laminar flow. Force feeding a child the liquefied organs of their sister's desecrated corpse? Kid's coughing that right up. High Reynolds number, turbulent flow. What the actual fuck are you talking about? Hi, Beth. That's where I come in. Let's talk about vampire panics throughout history.
That intro had absolutely nothing to do with anything in the rest of the video, and I absolutely love him for that.
Believe it or not, Bram Stoker's Dracula isn't the first major vampire book out there. In fact, it was partially inspired by the novel Carmilla, released a whole 25 years before.
Really?
Not only was it one of the most influential vampire books of all time, but it also showcased the first lesbian vampire in history, a creature of unearthly beauty with the ability to shapeshift and pass through walls to feed on her victims. But if you're looking to get sucked by a creature with even more unearthly beauty, you needn't look further than the new limited edition Vampire BlueJay plushie.
That's amazing. So, yeah, he makes an interesting point there, though. Like, I didn't know that Bram Stoker's Dracula wasn't, like, the first major novel to come out telling a vampire story. But I think that's often the case, right? You know, the thing that makes a story or an idea popular isn't necessarily first. And just like with inventions or historical events, everything is built on what comes before it. And so Bram Stoker's Dracula obviously was inspired by the things that came before it.
Here I was, consuming a fan behind a Long John Silver's when I thought to myself, golly, there's gotta be a more efficient way to feast on my subscribers' blood. When along came none other than U2's itself. In exchange for its life, they partnered up with me to create the first ever Halloween-themed BlueJay.
That's awesome.
A devilishly handsome demon complete with fangs and drip that fits just perfect on top of your bed so I can prey on you in the comfort of your home. It's spooky, it's squishy, it's probably HIV negative. Offering your flesh to the vampire BlueJay is your one-way ticket to the popular lunch table. Come on, all the cool kids are doing it. But there's only so much blood my hive-minded disciples can drink before they've had their fill, so click the link in the description to buy yours today before they sell out forever. And remember, it's only a parasite if you don't like it. Vampires have a storied history of infecting the annals of folklore of various cultures throughout the world. In fact, the fear of these life-sucking parasites is still alive and and well today. It's just that they've since rebranded from edgy cloaks to flashing lights. Instead of draining your blood, they prefer your 401k, and nowadays, they don't rise from the grave, they like to take you to it. But despite the very real danger of the modern variety, it was the classic vampire that incited more fear. So much so that many cultures established elaborate vampire hunting myths just to counter the blood-slurping devils. For example, in Eastern Europe, it was believed people born on Saturdays had special vampire hunting capabilities. Hey Steve, just popping by to let you know I cleaned up like 9 vampires in your backyard for you. Oh, really? I don't see anything. Yeah, you wouldn't. You have big Sunday vibes. They're only visible to us Saturday, boys, but don't worry. I'll keep an eye out for you. Sure. Thanks, Tom.
So one of the things I have to say is that, like anything in history, stories like this, they come from somewhere. Somewhere along the line, somebody did something that led people to jump to a conclusion or to make assumptions or to connect something unexplainable to something that they could understand. And thus came the story of vampires. So there's history buried in the middle of all of this somewhere.
Yeah, so like, that'll be $2,000. And just like Americans with the metric system, certain signs freaked people out the most, resulting in periods of mass hysteria that would become known as vampire panics. Back in the 18th century, God looked upon the misery of Eastern Europe and was like, wait, watch this. Engulfing the region in a vampire hysteria. Kicking off this monster mash was Peter Plogojowitz, which is an anagram for Big Vocal Rat Jeep. Peter...
It's interesting because Blagojevich was governor of Illinois a while back that ended up going to prison. But these panics, we might hear this and think, vampire panic, really? Are you insane? But think about how many witch panics we had. We had the Salem witch trials here in the United States, and mass hysteria can take all kinds of different forms, and it's not really all that hard to imagine that one thing goes unexplained and pretty soon there's a full-blown panic associated with it.
Was a Serbian peasant whose most notable contribution in life was dying. That's because in just 8 days following his death, 9 other villagers bit the dust after coming down with a mysterious illness. Now,
and this is a time when you don't have scientific explanation for a sudden illness like this that hits a community, and so you're looking for all sorts of reasons why, and especially in a very deeply religious community, you're going to look for some source of evil behind it all.
Pre-industrial peasants and dying of disease goes together like Sonic and autism, but what made this case unique was the fact that, allegedly, each dying villager claimed to have been assaulted by the recently deceased Peter. On top of that, Peter's widow swore he had returned from the dead to ask for his shoes, apparently terrifying her so much that she up and moved out of town. Thoroughly spooked, the villagers decided it was best to dig up their dead neighbor to investigate for signs of vampirism, demanding a local administrator and priest to be present for the desecration. Now, much like today, digging up a dead body to prod around willy-nilly is what many specialists would define as frowned upon, but
especially if that person died of a communicable disease that has spread to other people.
Despite the administrator's pleas that they seek official permission first, the villagers were kind of beyond the whole worry about proper bureaucratic channels stage of their vampire psychosis, and disinterred it anyway. To their horror, they found Peter's body surprisingly fresh. His hair and beard had grown, blood could be seen in his mouth, and new skin and nails had appeared on his hands.
All of which is perfectly explainable when you understand how body decay works, but in this case, this is confirmation bias, right? You go in thinking a set of facts are true, and you're looking for anything that proves what you already assumed to be the case, and they found all the evidence they needed.
All of the telltale vampire characteristics, or as we say today, normal decomposition. But to be fair, we are talking about a time before we had Dr. Mike to teach your average Joe
Dr. Mike. And not only that, but it's a time when your average person is not regularly digging up corpses. And so, you don't really have anything to compare it to. You can't look at him and be like, well, that's not like the last 5 corpses I dug up and looked at.
information, so they get a pass on this one from me. The populace then drove a stake through Peter's heart, after which it was reported that blood began to flow from his various orifices. For them, this just added more proof that he was a vampire. But for those of us who grew up with water rockets, you'd know this is the expected reaction after squeezing a fluid-filled sack. Albeit, this version probably leaves a kid riddled with psychological trauma instead of scientific wonder. Peter wasn't an isolated case, however.
You have to remember this is a time before people were generally embalmed. Embalming's really, largely a 20th century thing where people were mostly all embalmed. It wasn't that common even back 150, 200 years ago. So today you would avoid things like that because the embalming process takes care of a lot of the things you might expect to have happen like that.
It's just the first of many reports that begin to flood in of villages being attacked by vampires. Take Arnold Paole, a Serbian ex-soldier who often complained about being plagued by vampires. Oh, God, I get bit like crazy. I know, right? I swear they just love my blood. I wish we could repel them somehow.
And people make jokes about stuff today, like, I'm off to see the vampire, and what they mean is they're going to get their blood drawn for something. But 200, 300 years ago, a statement like that could be taken out of context.
Worry, I have the perfect cure for vampires. Oh, cool. Wait, what? What is wrong with you? It's the only way! Apparently, he was able to keep the vampires at bay by devouring the dirt of suspected vampire graves and smearing himself in their corpses' blood. Which, yeah, I think most people would see that and cross the street. While Arnold kept his neck safe from vampire fangs, the same couldn't be said for Cobblestone, as he died after breaking his neck falling off a hay wagon. Like Peter, Arnold's death too preceded a period of rapid deaths, with villagers again proclaiming Arnold had plagued them on their deathbed. So, as before, his village gathered for a little grave-digging community event, where after his heart was staked and blood then quaked, his head was braked and body baked. What made these cases notable was the fact that they couldn't just be chalked up to local superstition. These stories came out of the direct involvement of Austrian authorities, where doctors and officials witnessed, reported, and confirmed the existence of vampires. The hysteria...
So, listen, let's be honest, and as a Christian, certainly I have a particular worldview when it comes to these kinds of things, that there very well, in my mind, could have been some form of spiritual involvement here, beyond just disease and misunderstanding and hysteria that can't be explained. There are things throughout history that, even you take away the Christianity component and the God and devil component to things, there are just frankly things in history that lots of people witness that cannot be explained rationally, and this may be one of those.
Went international, stirring a rise in vampire belief amongst rural and uneducated peasants from Serbia to England. So widespread and long-lasting was this vampire panic that it got to the point where Maria Theresa, as in Holy Roman Empress Maria Theresa, had to get involved. Local magistrate Carper, what are you doing here? There's vampires, I'm scared. What are you on about? Can I sleep with you? No, you can't. There's no such thing as vampires. Go back to your village. Yeah, I saw them. If I send Dr. Sweeten to check for vampires, will you go back to bed? Okay. To definitively answer the vampire question, Empress Theresa sent her personal physician to investigate the blood-sucking hullabaloo. The doctor looked at the bodies, said, yeah, that's people, and concluded that vampires did not exist. Theresa then swiftly passed laws banning the opening and desecration of graves, which is a little like having to ban eating dog poop. Not something you'd ever think you'd need to tell people, but a rule you'll really appreciate when the weird neighbor boy is left alone in the yard for too long. While she was successful in ending this vampire epidemic, like much of Europe's mistakes, it was America's turn to fuck up now. Boom, 1800s. You're in England, but remastered, living in a small farming town with your wife and 7 kids. No wife and 6 kids. Your family's dead. Your only son is still kicking, but is starting to show the same symptoms his siblings had before their turn for the worst, and you have no idea how to help him. This story is very similar to that of George Brown, a Rhode Island resident who lost his wife and 2 daughters to consumption, which sounds like the 8th deadly sin, but it's really just a very metal old name for tuberculosis.
Yeah, and there were other diseases associated with it that were kind of lumped in with consumption, but 90% of the time when you see the word consumption, it's referring to tuberculosis.
With the shocking number of deaths in his family, and with his son Edwin looking to join the scoreboard, George's neighbors were determined to find the root cause of his misery. I know.
And if you think about some of the symptoms of consumption, kind of wasting away, coughing up blood, having a difficult time breathing, in a deeply religious community, it doesn't take a lot to see spiritual work going on behind the scenes in all that.
I know, it's terrible. But have you considered that maybe it's your bitch daughter's fault? Insisting his family was cursed, George's neighbors demanded permission to dig up his dead relatives to see who was feeding on the living. He reluctantly agreed, but didn't join them as they got to work cracking open his family's coffins like loot boxes, for obvious reasons. Looking for signs of blood, the mother and oldest daughter, having been dead for nearly a decade, were bone dry. But Mercy Brown was buried in the winter and was quite fresh. So they ripped out Mercy's heart and liver, discovered clotted blood in the decomposing organs, and burned them on a random rock. Afterwards, they scooped up the ashes and put them in a vase, added water, and fed them to her sick brother in an attempt to cure his consumption. What's the matter, Edwin? You've barely touched your Mercy. Now, you might just think this is a rare case of batshittery, but this was all taking place during a period known as the New England Vampire Panic.
So I knew about the New England Vampire Panic, and I was aware of some of the stories. I was not aware of the making the kid drink the ashes of the heart and liver part. That's taking it to a whole new level.
A time where upwards of 25% of all of New England's deaths were due to consumption, causing many superstitious...
Listen, to this day, tuberculosis is the single deadliest communicable disease on Earth, even now in modern times. It was a huge deal. And this is also a time when you had cholera pandemics happening, and you had other diseases. I mean, this was not... Life was regularly pandemic. We just all lived through one that killed a lot of people, but a very small percentage of the population. Lived through the bubonic plague that kills a third to one half of all of Europe in a couple of years. Lived through cholera pandemics and typhus and consumption, and this was just a regular part of life. And so you're desperate for anything you think might be able to help you with it.
Rural communities to lose their marbles and blame vampires. After all, when everyone you know and love starts up and dying for reasons you can't quite explain, you kind of just start trying anything that comes to mind, including digging up and desecrating bodies, apparently. It's important to note, however, that we don't have evidence that these villagers ever actually used the term vampires. That's just how it was reported in the papers. But
right. Yeah, trying to put yourself into the mindset of these people, it's easy on the outside to look back on 200 years ago and judge these people as psychos for what they did. But when you're desperate, when people are dying, and you don't have modern medicine that has an explanation and a fix for it, you'll try just about anything. It's kind of like when you hear stories about cannibalism with people that are like out on a raft floating in the middle of the ocean or crashed in the Andes Mountains, and you think, I would never do that. I would never eat another. Yeah, it's easy to say that sitting in your living room munching on Doritos. And I said Doritos because I happen to have some right here. It's a whole different ball game when you're starving and stranded and don't know if you're going to be rescued. You're desperate, you'll try anything.
Hey, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck and has its chest cavity ripped open and organs melted into a gore smoothie to put a stop to evil spirits feeding on the blood of relatives, like a duck. For all intents and purposes, this is a vampire. When a corpse was determined to be a vampire, solutions ranged from just flipping the body over in its grave to full-on decapitation, dismemberment, and literally making a skull and crossbones with the femurs. Of course, no vampire hunt was complete without a little organ barbecue. And, like with the Browns, the ashes would be fed to the family, or they'd get together to do a little cremation hotbox, like a dystopic precursor to medical marijuana. Yo, which strain is that? Martha. But believe it or not, this cure did not work for Edwin Brown. It really only ensured that the last fleeting moments of his life were as psychologically taxing as they were physical, as Edwin would die just 2 months after gulping down the Smoke Sister smoothie. Now, you're probably sitting there thinking, well, it's silly, but people just didn't know better at the time. But that's the thing. The Mercy Brown incident happened in 1892. The tuberculosis bacteria was discovered in 1882, a whole 10 years before this horror show, and long after germ theory had been considered proven. In fact, a doctor was present for Mercy Brown's desecration and performed an autopsy on her. Yeah, that's tuberculosis. Roast her on a stick? All right, boys, get out the George Foreman. You heard completely different from what I said somehow. Feed her to Edwin now. With this story, you might be tempted to point and laugh at the people of the past for not understanding their modern medical information, because that's totally not a thing today. But if we can learn anything from these vampire panics, it's to not eat your sister. Sound advice that should serve you well in more ways than one.
Oh, no. No. He just showed Jamie and Cersei Lannister talking about not eating your sister. That was not okay.
7 out of 10 stars. But my merch, 10 out of 10 stars.
All right, as always, very entertaining, very informational as well. I think BlueJay is probably one of the best channels if you're looking for humor, but also information. And let this and videos like this be a jumping off point, right? You know, this isn't meant to be a deep dive into these topics, but maybe it makes you interested to learn a little bit more and find out about some of the background through this. Or maybe you're somebody who already has studied this in a deep way and you can educate the rest of us. Let us know in the comment section below what more we need to know about this, what background there is, maybe if there's some more information that wasn't presented. Let's all learn history together. I want to thank Caleb great name, by the way, Caleb. It's my eldest son's name. In Fordland, Missouri, and Lane in Abilene, Kansas. Thank you both so much for your support on Patreon. Thanks for watching.